Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Thank you very much for being patient while we deal with a couple of technical issues in the green room. Technical issues with my microphone, where I was on some sort of crazy warped audio loop, and I've managed to juggle to a different kind of microphone. So fingers crossed it won't happen again. But if it does, we'll carry on. Andrew and Crystal here are well briefed on how to deal with it. So we're a little bit late. So we're just going to jump in and do a very quick sort of sound and visual check. Can everyone let me know if you could kind of hear me, if I'm not coming through all right, and you could see me? And then Crystal, can you say something? And then Andrew, can you say something as well?
Oh, hello, I'm Crystal. I'm very pleased to be here. And I think we might do some things in the module as well. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Andrew, and I'm talking close to my mic, so I have that podcast voice. And I too would like to do something in the module as well.
I have no idea what you mean by the module. I heard you mention it while I was going through my technical panic, and I obviously missed the context of it. But you two are definitely having fun at my expense. But anyway, everyone can hear us, which is good, and you can see us, which is equally good. So we're going to get started, do a quick introduction, and then dive as quickly as we can do into today's topic, which is all about optimizing websites for local search in 2022. This webinar has proved wonderfully popular. We've actually had nearly 900 people register for it, which is one of the highest we've had in this series of webinars, and actually probably for most of this year, which is sort of fantastic. And we've got 330 plus people have joined us today, and we've got more and more arriving. So we'll let some of those arrive while we do a quick introduction to both Andrew and to kind of Crystal, but I'm going to let them do the introduction. Then we're going to do a quick poll, actually, to get a sense check of today's audience and how confident they feel around the topic of on-site optimization. That'll give us a bit of a stake in the ground for where our audience sort of sits today. And then I'll give an overview of the agenda, and then we'll get straight into it. So let me just share my screen quickly. Okay, so let me make sure that is coming through. It is wonderful. Okay, we've passed the next technical hurdle. So Andrew, can you please say a few words about yourself to the audience, and why you're so extremely well qualified to talk on today's topic?
Because I'm a huge Stereolab fan, and here's the link to my Stereolab playlist in the chat. And yeah, I've been doing SEO consulting for large and small businesses for, I guess, 16 years, something like that. So and I've been known to get on webinars about that topic. There you go.
You've been known to go on webinars with that topic. Excellent. So it's good that other people have let you on to webinars on this topic before we
yes,
have.
Exactly.
That gives you a sort of certain sort of pedigree.
Something like that. Yeah, Miles lets me on webinars. That's my
we love having you, Andrew, because you're always a little bit sort of irreverent, and you always like to stir the pot a bit. So I hope you are going to give us some food for thought today.
Well, what I like to say is SEO is one of the most ridiculous marketing channels out there. So I think you have to have a healthy capacity for ridiculousness if you work in this industry. So
yeah, well said. I appreciate that. Things are always changing, and things are never what they seem or what Google tells you they are.
You're being paid to tell someone the equivalent of I don't know, like stand on your tippy toes, turn around, and say the magic words, and something great will happen. So that's what it sounds like to most people. So
excellent. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for one of your customer pitches. Okay, thanks, Andrew. Thanks again for being on one of our webinars. We do really appreciate you giving us your time. And we have a newcomer to BrightLocal webinars, which is Crystal Carter from Wix. Crystal, please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Crystal Carter. I am the head of SEO communications at Wix, and I have worked with lots of different clients. I've worked as a freelancer doing local SEO with smaller businesses. I've worked in-house. I've worked for agencies, and now I'm working with Wix. And one of the things that I've seen across all of that different experience is sort of what it's like implementing local SEO as an individual, and also implementing SEO for your clients. and also seeing within Wix, we work with making sure that we have a lot of tooling and a lot of things that are available for people to create local SEO magic. And so we are able to see like the kinds of things that people need to know there as well. And hello, Claire, it's nice to see you. Thank you very much for being as lovely as you are in the chat. And yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about this. I love local SEO. I find it really fun as a challenge, and also because sometimes if you're doing local SEO, you can sort of see the people that are your rivals because they might be the business that's next door to you, and I like when you're able to sort of get one up on them. Sometimes I think that the competitiveness of local SEO is a lot of fun.
Great. Well, Crystal, this is your first time on a BrightLocal webinar, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really have enjoyed meeting you in the sort of build up to this, and it's always great to have a new face and a name and a new set of experience to share with our kind of customer base. So really appreciate it, and really looking forward to hearing about your experience today. We also have a third and more sort of silent and visible member of the team, that is the one and only kind of Claire Carlisle, who is the resident local SEO expert at BrightLocal, and she also runs Claire Carlisle Marketing. Claire is going to be doing two things. One, she's going to be incredibly helpful by responding to kind of comments within the kind of chat stream and providing links to resources that might get mentioned, and she'll go and look to try and bring in the resources that she hasn't already got the links to. She'll be providing answers. She's also going to be helping manage the Q&A and providing some answers to some of the questions that go into the kind of Q&A module. So huge thanks to Claire for being on hand to help us today. Really helps us, myself and the panelists, really focus on the discussion and the questions that are coming in. So that's a real help. Without further ado, we're going to sort of run a very quick poll. Like as many people as possible to participate in this. It's going to be on your screen in a second, and then I'm going to show you the agenda, and then my colleague Jenny is going to have tabulated the results in about 90 seconds. We'll share those back with you, and then we can essentially get a sort of sense check, a stake in the ground for how the audience feels about their level of understanding and appreciation of on-site optimization. So that poll should be available for you to complete now. The agenda today is split into three parts, in three sort of equalish 30-minute bursts, and I have a little sort of magic cube today because I'm a really appalling timekeeper. This is going to try and keep me on track, give us 30 minutes per section. We're going to start off from the kind of ground up, looking at the basics of on-site optimization, and I've got a number of questions I'm going to put to Andrew and to Crystal to tease out their knowledge and expertise in the area. Then we're going to dive into some more advanced pieces about boosting on-site elements for the local SEO algorithm, getting things such as schema and other more advanced topics. Around 30 minutes on that, and then we're going to have the final 30 minutes for Q&A. So all of your questions, if you could put them in the question module at the bottom of the screen, then once we kind of get to that section of the webinar, we'll just be looking through the questions. You can upvote questions, so please do look at the questions that are already there. Add an upvote if you really want us to answer that question. The ones with the most upvotes rise to the top, and when we get to the Q&A section, we'll be just picking off the questions on the top as we go, and we're going to try and answer as many questions as we can do. I know that section is really, really popular, so we'll make sure we give that section the full 30 minutes that it deserves. These are a quick snapshot of the questions I'm going to be asking. There's a lot to read through there. Trust me, I've got them down here, so I know what the questions are asking. I'll be firing these off to Andrew and to Crystal. And Andrew and Crystal, please do kind of sort of jump in, add extra kind of context to the other person's answer. Also looking for some kind of contradiction or some other kind of sort of challenging sort of elements so that we can get a real kind of debate happening around this topic. Then we're going to be looking at boosting on-site elements, again, another set of questions, and then turning the questions over to our audience. Now, I think we've got our poll results. Just looking for Jenny for confirmation. Yep, just give me the thumbs up. So I'm just very quickly going to come out of this and then go back into the slideshow again to see where we stand. Okay, so Jenny, how many people have we had to do the poll roughly?
130.
Okay, we've had 130 people do it, and what we can see is that in the main, people are fairly confident around on-site optimization. Some people are very, very confident. Some are a little bit, an equal number actually are a little bit confident, and there's a number who aren't confident. So actually got a real spirit of spread, but it's somewhere really between a little to very kind of confident. That's the spread of the audience today, which is pretty typical of the audiences that we get for our webinar. So I'm now going to sort of stop sharing. You're just going to have us on the screen. And Crystal, I'm going to come to you with the first question. What do we really mean by on-site optimization, and how big an impact does it have on local search ranking?
So I would say that on-site optimization, I think for if you're not doing local SEO, then this is, I think, what most people think of as SEO, as a sort of core tactic of SEO. But if you are doing local SEO, then obviously like doing things like listings and citations and like making sure that you have local footprint across the web is really important. So the on-site optimization is essentially, to my mind, is the optimizations that you make regarding SEO that help to verify the information that you're sharing across the wider space of your internet footprint. So if you say on your Facebook that we do this and this, you should also make sure that on the website you also have that information, that it's searchable, that it's easy to see, that it's all of that sort of stuff. A lot of local businesses will start sometimes with a social profile, for instance. A lot of smaller businesses may start with a social profile, but make sure that you have a similar sort of setup on your website, and that it is also optimized in all of the sort of standard sort of ways that we would expect for SEO.
And the scale of the impact. I mean, how much in the world we live in today, in terms of all the things that someone can do to boost their SEO, to boost their prominence, their visibility across the web. Just how important is the website? How much impact does it have?
So your website is your HQ. It's where people go to verify that you are who you say you are, that you do what you say you do. There's, again, if you compare a website to a social media profile, anybody can spin up a Facebook page pretty quickly. But your website is something that you can build equity on over the course of time. It's something that people will send backlinks to over years. It's something that people will be able to, that you're able to add whatever you want to. So you're not constrained by the different parameters of a social media platform. Like I don't know, Instagram has certain content that you can add, and then the other platforms might have other things that you can add. So I would say that your website is your HQ, and even if you have lots of different profiles across different media, across different channels, making sure that your website has the verifiable information and is as optimized as possible for your brand and for your core tactics is really, really important. And also because it gives you a lot of options for a lot of different elements. So within Google, people talk about page one of Google, but there are lots of page ones. There's the main sort of plain blue links. There's the images, there's the videos, there's shopping, there's travel, there's lots of different parts of Google. And if you have a good website, then you're able to, depending on what vertical you're in, you're able to access all of that, which is something that you're not able to do necessarily in with other platforms.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Someone is saying they hear an echo. Is that me again? No, I'm not. It's not me. Wonderful. I think it might be Brad who's having some sort of struggles. But I'm just going to sort of mute myself when I'm not talking, just in case. I don't want to make people sick. So Andrew, obviously, a lot of local businesses will have the Google Business Profile. Why do they? If that's such a prominent piece of sort of real estate on the web, why do they need a website today?
Is that a real question? Like, are we really talking about that subject? Like, why do you need a website? So I guess if all you do is get calls or need people to get driving directions to you, maybe you really don't need a website. But for most things, most non-SEO things, you need a website. So you might want to have one to like say what you do and have a lead form or a phone number or whatever, pictures of your products or something that might help. But in fact, while it's not everything, your website has a huge influence over how you rank in the local packs. So why wouldn't you want a website? There are plenty of instances of businesses without websites ranking in local packs. Usually like spammers, like usually do pretty well with it. And that's typically, I think, a factor of location, and then probably backlinks, right? So I've figured out a way to acquire an address this actually happened to me when I needed a locksmith. So I got locked out of a place I was staying, and I found a locksmith surprising right in the next building where I was staying. And it wasn't really a locksmith. It was just someone who had, hacked a Google Business Profile to be at that building so that someone on that block looking for a locksmith would show up. So long story short, sure, have a website. It doesn't need to be complicated, but have a website. that says, like Crystal says what you guys do. And I'll give you one more helpful tip. If you've looked lately in your Google business profile, Google's usually crawling your website, scraping all the things it thinks you do, and saying, hey, we think you do these things. And it looks like a huge list of orange text or something. Well, if you don't have a website that says all these things that Google might think you do, Google doesn't think you do them. So.
Yeah, and also for the Google business profile, they'll like if I'm looking up like a vegan bakery where I can get vegan donuts, for instance, if they say on the website vegan donuts, but they haven't put vegan donuts on their Google business profile, it will say on their website it says they have vegan donuts, for instance. Right. So it adds another layer to all of that, all of that information.
And I can tell you, we've seen it. We've done a lot of projects for kind of big companies that want to like figure out how to do stuff at scale. And one of the things I don't know if it's statistically significant, but it's certainly correlated with a lot of results, was a multi-location business or even a single location business having their Google business profile linked to the website for that location matters versus your homepage. And then that location page linking to a service category that you want to rank for matters. So all these things that you do on your website are signals that get fed back to the local pack algorithm and help you rank there.
Yeah, and I think just to go on from that, it's all about like it is an element of expertise, authority, and trust. Like, you're talking about this dodgy locksmith. You don't want anyone to be changing your locks, do you? This is important stuff to think about. So, and there's been a couple of times where I've looked at something and it looked fine on Google Business Profile, it looked fine on Facebook. Then I went into the website and I was like, no, like they don't have an address. I don't know who they are. I can't understand what's going on. And it's just another way for Google to verify, but also for users to verify that you are who you say you are. You do what you say you do. Like, what you're doing. And all of that sort of stuff. I think it's the kind of thing that can, like, your website is where you like seal the deal.
I'm going to share an experience that I had recently. I've been trying to get both an electrician and a plumber, and in the UK at the moment, it's very hard. They're incredibly busy. They ghost you the entire time when you try and get in contact with them, and then they just sort of disappear. And when they do arrive, they charge you phenomenal amounts of money. So all in all, it's a pretty hard experience getting tradesmen at the moment. So I had to get a new plumber and an electrician, and my experience was to search on Google and then to go and search on a site called Check a Trade, which is essentially a review site for tradespeople, which I've had good experiences of in the past and I really trust. And I found an electrician and I got 2 or 3 quotes, and I found a plumber 2 or 3 quotes, and I got an electrician and I got a plumber, and I never once visited their website. So I wonder how much that is, my experience in that scenario is mirroring what consumers out there are doing. I wonder if you've got any data that talks about where, or understands where conversions for businesses like that are happening, off-site or on-site, or any kind of sort of insights you might have.
I think that what's interesting there is you did visit a website. Like, you visited the website that you trust. So you visited essentially a directory website that you trust, that's verified. So for instance, if you were to think about like Airbnb, or if you are somebody who's looking for a house to stay in, you will know that the Airbnb is a reliable source for houses, for a guest house to stay in, for instance, because they have checks, because they do this, that, or the other. So you still visited a website to do that. Depending on the vertical, you as a business, you will know where your best channels are. So I know there are businesses where they do a lot of business through Facebook. They do a lot of business through Instagram. These are important channels for them. However, not everyone is on all those channels. And so essentially, if you don't have a website already and you are getting business through other platforms, like it's just, you're just adding money to money. Like you're creating a whole nother channel for yourself that will also work well with your existing profile. So if you're already doing well on Facebook, you're already doing well on Instagram, you're already doing well on Check a Tradesman or whatever it is, then that's giving you more real estate. So when people look up your name, Bob the Builder or whatever, they look up Bob the Builder on not that Bob the Builder, different Bob the Builder, but they look you up, they'll see you Check a Tradesman, they'll see your website, they'll see your Facebook, and then you get that, what I like the SERP dominance, where like they Google you and all they get is you. The whole page is just you. It's not some other people from some other thing, but the whole page is just you. And your website allows you to pull in lots of different things. We'll talk about schema later, but with schema, you can do things like same as. So you can list you can reference your information from this Check a Tradesman or whatever website that is. You can reference that within your information. You can also set up a reviews page, which it's a go-to move of mine. You basically you reference your reviews from these other websites again, and you can say like, here, we've got 4.5 stars on this website. Here's one of the quotes. Here's the link. Don't believe me? Check it out. There it is. It's right there. And so it allows you to sort of, again, seal the deal and to bring all of that stuff together. But if you're trying to optimize and you're trying to grow, then if you don't have a website, absolutely add a website.
Yeah, I'd also just point out that these lead sites like Home Advisor and was it Check Your Tradesman or something?
Very similar.
Yeah. You're basically as a business, you're basically paying them because they know how to arbitrage Google traffic better than you do, right? And you have an advantage over them because you hopefully have a physical location in your market. So by not investing in something like SEO, which over time proves itself to be significantly cheaper than buying leads from these sites, you're kind of leaving yourself at the mercy of Google and these other guys who are spending more money trying to get in front of the customer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you
And you're
get paid
paying for it.
listings.
Yeah. Both the plumbing and electrician said, next time, just contact me directly. So
Totally.
which is sort of totally fair enough. And question for you, Andrew. I know you kind of work more directly on sort of SEO campaigns for both small and very large businesses. What percentage of your sort of time and effort would you say you allocate to on-site optimization versus other activities?
Oh, I'd say that's got to be 75% of the time. Everything else is so rote. Like Google Business Profile stuff, that's a one and done, and then make sure that Google doesn't overwrite it or break something or something gets suspended. We monitor our clients' GVPs, and sometimes Google changes like the cover photo for an auto dealer to a kitty cat or something like, that kind of thing we have to be on top of, but that's not every day. And so basically what we're spending most of our time with most clients is trying to get them to upgrade their websites and fix technical problems. For big and small companies, that is a huge lift, even if it's a silly little thing, because it involves more people that are usually not in the marketing department, right? And then basically fixing their content so that it's quote unquote optimized and targeted, and then getting them to what we call publishing velocity, meaning, okay, the site is fine. Now let's start building it, adding to it, and targeting stuff, and then link building, and then that's SEO. It's a couple other things, but that's pretty much what we're doing all day long. So I'm sorry, and making sure they don't break it. That's also, I'd say that's 50% of our time.
And we're going to come on and talk about
technical SEO.
Single businesses versus multi-location in the sort of the advanced sort of portion of this, because I imagine the approach there is sort of very different. Now, Crystal, coming back to you, obviously at Wix, you're probably not actively involved in sort of optimizing clients, but obviously you've had a 15-year kind of career in SEO, working with both large and sort of small businesses. How do you view the activity of on-site optimization, and where do you see that you've had the most wins? What are the things that you've done that have really moved the needle for customers?
So the thing that I find is essentially you want your on-site optimization and your off-site optimization to have synergy. So like anything that you're doing off-site should reflect what you're doing on-site. So for instance, like you talk about like Google Business Profile, like posting on Google Business Profile, and you talk about the publishing velocity. Like Google Business Profile is a fantastic like content distribution machine. So you have those posts, and you're able to put posts there, and you're able to put information there. So once you publish things, you can put it there, and you can make sure that, and also the different categories that you get from Google Business Profile will also give you information for like the kinds of things that maybe you should put on your website. So while you're filling in your Google Business Profile, they'll ask you different attributes about your business. They'll say, are you in this category? Are you in that category? Do you serve this area? Do you have a menu? Do you have this? Do you have that? Well, when you're going through that, if you're not sure about that information, then you can use that to inform your on-site optimization. You can also use that to think about like what things you should be highlighting on the page for instance, if you're thinking about like if you're looking at like which keywords to target for one area or another, then you can look at like for instance, I think in England you have like solicitor or attorney or barrister or gosh, what's the other one that's like that's like litigator, like that, like litigation things. So you have different names for different things. On Google Business Profile, it'll have another thing, for instance. So it might say something different from what you have on your website, and that's also useful information. Similarly, Google Business Profile has like information about like there'll be Q&As, and people will ask you regular questions. Well, if they're asking you questions there and you don't have that information on your page, then that's something that you should think about. So when I see really good local SEO, it has that synergy. And again, like the schema markup, for instance, will reflect that sort of thing. And you're able to and you're able to bring everything through, so that all of the different parts of your business are reflected both on site and off site in a positive way.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. I thought it was a really good, I thought it was a very, very good answer. Just sort of digesting it. I'm going to flip back at your question to kind of Andrew, because you talked a little bit about how you approach sort of getting a client's website in order. And it seemed to me that you focus initially on the kind of underlying structure and architecture, essentially building the framework for the website, and then you fill it with content. That's right. How you see it?
Pretty much, yeah. And sometimes it goes in the other direction because it's harder to redo your website, right? And most everyone can put up a blog or something and publish. Yeah, it all depends on what the priorities and strategy are to get a program going.
And I guess, and access to resource, presumably. If you need technical work done on the website and technical resources available, you've got to try and move the needle through other means. Yeah,
actually, it's interesting. We had this is totally coincidence. I think we had our first client over the last 2 weeks who actually is built on Wix.
Yay!
And so, which I've never seen it with a like a sizable business before. And so we were like, hey, you got to do these 20 things. And they're like, do you know anyone who is like a Wix developer? I'm like, is there such a thing as a Wix developer?
Yeah, there's loads. We have loads. Like hit me in the DMs. Like we'll chat.
Right. No, we found one, but I was like, I think my kid's a Wix developer. Right?
Ouch.
Wow.
No, but I mean, it's so simple. Like I've built websites with my kids before on Wix, right? It's not a developer thing. It's like, oh, click and add a page kind of thing, right?
Yeah, we've got a lot of different things.
In terms of, Andrew, in your experience then, the impact that getting the technical framework side of a site right versus having all the necessary content for the keywords you want to target, which has a bigger impact, and how much that impact multiplied when you get the two things working really harmoniously and effectively?
So I think probably the most common problem we see with sites, actually of any size, but they're usually the more complicated sites. We like complicated stuff. We're kind of weird that way. Is what we'll call accessibility issues, meaning a machine can't find and understand all of your content. And if that's the case, like no amount of publishing stuff is really going to help because the machine can't find it or understand it.
Right.
And so in those cases, like we just fixed it. We're working with a big home rental site, and their entire site was built in a way that Google can't really see the links or see anything. And so they just, after like 6 months of telling them, this is why your traffic's not growing, they finally fixed it. And I think within the first 10 days, they saw like a 30% increase in traffic or something like that.
I think I always find it interesting with the, sorry to cut you off.
How dare you? What are you? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, I think that this is the reason why I love technical SEO, because like content SEO can take a long time. You have to ideation, and you have to write, and you have to approve, and you have to publish, and all that sort of stuff. But technical stuff, if there is a technical blocker and you can fix it, and like I've had it before where people say, "Oh, well, I'm a developer, I know lots of stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, but you didn't do this." And they're like, and you fix that one thing, and you can see the uptick immediately. So people say, "Oh, SEO takes 6 months." I'm like, not tech SEO. Like depending on the site, you can see tech SEO. You can see green shoots within a week. You can see proper impact within a month, and you can see like real business impact by like 3 months easy.
I'll say sometimes.
Sometimes,
Right?
depending on what it
Yeah.
is, because like you're right, like there's sometimes where like they have a massive video on the homepage and it's like, well, nobody can see it. Google can't read it. People can't read it. Nobody can read it. It's not helping anyone. Or they don't have, they've got, files blocked, or they've got pages not being able to be indexed, and all sorts of things.
And usually with a larger site, again, there's usually sometimes, let's say in 15% of the cases, there's what I'll call a ghost in the machine, meaning you can do all the best practices, technical stuff right, and it's still, and that requires like serious detective work to like, what the hell? Like there's some stupid thing, like you bought a domain 10 years ago, redirected it, and it's penalizing you or something. Like, so there's a bunch of that stuff in SEO that really makes it tricky. And it's kind of like working on a patient with a new disease where you're like, try this thing. I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah. But I think that detective work is my favorite thing, because I love a puzzle. And so when I find it, I'm like, aha.
I think you have to really, to do SEO well, you really have to love solving puzzles, because that's all we do all day long.
And how much of the kind of technical challenges come down to the platform it's built on? WordPress is clearly, from our experience surveying our customers, absolutely the number one platform that they use for sort of building websites. And obviously, because you work for Wix, and I appreciate that you've got a line to kind of communicate around the sort of the benefits of Wix. But if you're sort of struggling to make progress on an existing platform, how often do you put it down to the platform, and actually it's just worth re-platforming to sort of something else to see if that can drive better performance for you?
So John Mueller has said that, like, from an SEO point of view, from a Google point of view, like, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. Like, it matters like your implementation. One of the things that something out of the box will give you is there will be certain technical SEO frameworks which are standard across the board. So every Wix website has a robots.txt. I've seen plenty of self-built websites that do not. Every Wix website has a dynamic sitemap. I've seen plenty of self-built websites that do not. There's lots of other things that are built in. We have auto redirects, like an auto redirect tool that's built in. There's tons of things that are built in to a CMS like Wix that is not. And I think people think of WordPress as if it's the same, but it's not exactly, because you pretty much have to you have to piece your WordPress together, and it can be tricky. I've seen it done well. I've seen it done in other ways as well. So they're all different. But with something like with a CMS like Wix, you have a certain benchmark that is standard for every single website. So I think with regards to SEO, it's all about the tools. You could give me a Fender guitar, the Fender Stratocaster guitar right now, and I would play cowboy chords, and that's what I would do, because that's what I can do. That's all I can do. You give the same guitar to, I don't know, Lenny Kravitz or something, and they do something beautiful. He could also play something beautiful on a $5 guitar from a toy shop, because he's really good at guitar. It depends. It's not just about the thing. It's about how you implement it.
Yeah, I would even just add on to that. It's more about who's the developer than what the platform is, and what are they able to, and most of the time willing to do.
Andrew, in your experience, that kind of ghost in the machine analogy you mentioned, do you find that sometimes actually when you are sort of butting up against that particular sort of ceiling and you just can't seem to identify what's the root cause, is it worth just actually re-platforming to sort of something else and building from scratch, rather than just continually try and identify this ghost in the machine?
I would never, as an SEO person, I would never advocate for that. I might hint at it. Well, this thing's a piece of crap. And then I would try to find someone who has a non-SEO reason to be the champion for that, because that is not an SEO decision, right? That's a vet the company type decision. And so let the person who's responsible for vetting the company make that decision. You shouldn't. You can't be. The SEO guy can't figure it out. We need a whole new website, right? That just seems crazy.
Well, really, even for say smaller businesses that don't have that kind of scale, we're not talking of a Target here. We're talking of a small local business.
Oh, I think, well, in that case, I'd be like, yeah, your website needs XYZ, and then there's no reason why it can't have XYZ. But if they are like, oh, we can't afford to do it, then maybe they need to go to Wix because it's cheaper and easier and whatever. In that case, sure, why not? Right? If it's a 2-page website, Why not? Like that, yeah, that's not a substantial decision.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Chris, a question for you. What do you see as the kind of typical sort of red herrings or time wasters that a lot of marketeers spend on when it comes to on-site optimization? What are the things that you see people still doing that actually don't move the needle but suck up a lot of time, headspace, resource?
So with keyword research, I think that there are a lot of people that spend a lot of time and a lot of inefficient time on keyword research sometimes. And I'm not saying that keyword research isn't a valuable thing, but I think that sometimes people will just like run a tool and spew out 3,000 keywords for the whole website. And when I see those spreadsheets, it just stresses me out. Like, I think that keyword research with intent, keyword research with a purpose, keyword research, you know, for a specific type of page or section of pages or something like that. When people do like keyword research for the whole website all at once, what I often see with that is that the client will get it, will be overwhelmed by like, you know, 17,000 lines on an Excel sheet. And then things don't always move as quickly as they could if you were to focus on something that you wanted to move, and then move to the next thing, and then move to the next thing, and move to the next thing. And there's ways to manage your keyword research like workflow so that it does that, so that, you know, you say, okay, I've done this research. Don't you worry about that. We'll do this section first. But I think that being able to prioritize tasks so that people aren't overwhelmed by SEO activity is a way that you can actually get things done. Because I think a lot of times SEOs come up against where they've made this recommendation and then it sits, and that's incredibly frustrating for everyone. So I think that it's important to, whatever you're doing, and if you, let's say keyword research, for instance, that if you're going for something and you're like, we need to rank for this, and we need to rank for it in lots of different ways, or we need to rank for this topic or this section or whatever, and we need to look at these pages, and these pages, and then you do your keyword research based on that. I find that that's better than just doing like general keyword research without any particular like business intent or competitive intent in mind.
So do you start then by, I guess, kind of quizzing the client on what are their sort of money phrases, what are their money services that they want to promote, and that forms your initial pool of keywords that allow you to work within a tighter framework rather than a very broad one.
Yeah, I think we look at the competitive landscape. So there's been a couple of times when I've looked at who their competitors were and looked at which terms they were actually ranking for and thought, we hadn't even considered that. We haven't even considered that term. We haven't even considered that topic. And sort of seen like, oh, well, actually we could, if we did some content here, we did some optimizations there, we moved around this, we said this word instead of that word, we added this piece of content, we added this piece of rich results. Then I think that's useful. I think also it's very important to remember, particularly with local businesses, you know, things where it's like niche specific. So like with shopping, for instance, like you need to have like rich results for shopping, like that's just really important. Recruiters need to be on Google for Jobs, for instance. This is really important. Like if you're not in that game, then you're not on the board. So I think understanding search features, but also understanding the competitive landscape is really, really important. And I tend to start with understanding that.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Andrew,
Crystal.
you look quizzical.
That's just my look.
Okay.
I think the same question for you, Andrew. I wonder what what sort of red herrings and sort of time wasters do you get frustrated when you see sort of SEOs touting or putting their energies into?
Actually, I don't want to talk about SEOs touting stuff. SEOs tout all sorts of things. I'll give you some real life examples that are happening to us this week with the client with the Wix site, as a matter of fact, and they're a really good example because they're very new to SEO. They understand it enough to hire someone and know they need it, but they don't really get it, right? They haven't internalized it yet. So we've given them a whole plan, like do this to your website, publish this kind of content, update this kind of thing, like a super like tight, like in the next 30 days, let's do this. And we're getting a request from them. Hey, can you look at this press release? Can you optimize this press release? Or we're doing a newsletter. Can we optimize this newsletter? And we can. It just like, who cares about optimizing a newsletter? And I think they're they're not listening to, not that we're such geniuses, but they're not listening to the doctor when he says, stop smoking. They're like, oh, can I chew tobacco or something? I'm like, no, just don't use tobacco. Right.
Man.
And so, and then I'll give an example of a larger client who need, like they're an e-commerce site, and we've identified that they need a new taxonomy, like 1 million different products, that kind of thing. And they're like, okay, can you guys, we need one next week. Can you guys make us one? I'm like, why are you asking the SEO guy to make your taxonomy? Like, I can crawl your competitor, and which is what we did. We crawled the competitor and said, here's theirs, but we have no idea if it's accurate, right? You need to, oftentimes SEO can bleed into other areas for marketing or product or whatever. And so you need to be able to get the different groups to inform each other, but not have like, you don't want the SEO guy. If it's a small site, maybe the SEO guy can do your taxonomy. But if it's a monster site, do not hire a taxonomist, right? Don't think that SEO is going to solve everything, I guess is.
I think also one of the things like this reminded me of clients who just say, oh, this ranking shifted. Can you tell us why? And I'm like, and they expect you to reply in like 20 minutes or something. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to have to check 12 different data sources. And also like all Google's update things and like all your competitors and this, that, and the other. And it's just like, that's not a 20-minute like answer. This like, I need, like that's a dissertation. I don't know. Like,
right. Can I just jump in and address Brandon's hot take? Brandon, I think you're missing some nuance there. I don't think I'm bitter at all toward being an SEO. I actually like it. It's like, but I think I have the demeanor of a doctor that has told patients to stop smoking for 20 years. And every one of them is still smoking Marlboro Reds and eating like foie gras for dinner and not jogging. Like that's, so I guess, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit cranky about that. There you go.
Well, I think one of the hardest jobs of being an SEO is managing client expectations. And there's these two examples you gave there, whereas clients, you were telling them one thing and they wanted something different, or their expectations of what you could deliver was more than actually what your remit really was. And I think, Andrew, you probably have the benefit of being in the game for a long time, being kind of well established, having a reputation that you could probably push back fairly confidently on the kind of clients that you work with. But I think probably a lot of new people getting into the game who are really eager to win new clients and maybe a little bit less confident in their relationship with clients will probably often say, yes, I'll do that because I want clients and I want the reputation and I want to kind of grow my business. They probably find themselves like down a hole trying to figure out how they do something that's kind of beyond what their remit should really be.
Oh, we fall into that trap all the time.
Okay.
We're not perfect at all. No, we want to help people who want to do certain things, and we don't want to say no. Sometimes we have to, sure, but most of the time we're like, okay, how can I help you? Or hey, yeah, you really should hire a taxonomist, but okay, I'll go crawl a competitor website and send you the spreadsheet, right?
And I think particularly for local businesses, this can be a really like I had clients where they would ask me like really random stuff. They'd be like smaller clients, and they'd be like, oh, can you change this picture on the webpage? And I'd be like, sure. Like I know that they're not very they're not very web savvy but they pay their bills on time. Like they just let me get on with it. Like they do all of that sort of stuff. I've had clients like that before. And like that kind of thing, if you can, and if it's not sort of mission creep, because you do have to keep an eye on it. But that kind of thing can go a long way to building client trust and can go a long way to helping you retain clients. If they know that you're there for them. And things, and can also be a really good opportunity to create to offer new services. So like they might not know a taxonomist, but like you might be able to put them in touch with someone, or you might be able to project manage that for them if that's something that they need. So yeah, I think that it can be tricky because you want to look after your clients at the same time, like you do have multiple clients. So it can be tricky. And I think sometimes when they're local, if they are local to you, as well as being local businesses, it can be tricky to balance, but it tends to be worth it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on to the more advanced kind of questions now. And actually, Chris, I'm going to stay with you. And you mentioned local schema earlier. What is your approach to getting local schema right? And how do you go about understanding the topic and really becoming proficient at it so that you can execute on it efficiently?
So again, I think that it's important to think about your business goals. And to think about your competitiveness with regards to search. So a lot of schema. One of the reasons I got interested in schema, and one of the reasons why I think it's really great, is because of rich results. Now, schema markup is not a ranking factor. Google have said this on multiple occasions. However, a lot of times they put the rich results higher than the plain blue links, higher than the number one spot. So to my mind, it does roughly the same thing if you are able to be competitive in that particular position. So rich results are really, really, really valuable, and they're really, really useful. And so if you're in a particular vertical where there is a Google managed rich result, like if you're doing recipes or events or jobs or even local business schema markup, for instance, or like knowledge panels, various different things, then you should make sure that you have the schema that allows you to show for the rich results that's most relevant to your vertical. And there's something called the Rich Results Gallery, which is a really good place where you can see all of that information. And this is something that we at Wix thinks is super valuable. We have a lot of tools that allow you that have like structured data built into the tool because we think it's so valuable, and it's because it's something that, like, when I got as an agency side, the thing I always found fantastic about schema markup is that it allows you to compete in a way that just takes like being smart. Like you just need to like get your act together, get the schema on there, and then you can be in front of a lot of different folks. So it's really important. And thinking about approaching local schema as well, in the same way that I was talking about Google Business Profile, and using that as a guide to identify content gaps. When you're looking at your local schema, for instance, there are ones that are specific to a niche. So you can find like local schema, or you can see schema markup for a restaurant, for instance. And on schema.org, you can see all of the different attributes that they expect to see, or that you could possibly put on a restaurant markup. And you can also use that as a guide to figure out, do you have this information on your website? Is it relevant to your website? Would it be useful for your website? Because this is something that Google's clearly looking for. This is something that other websites are clearly looking for, and it's something that could be useful to you. So I think that it's important to think about what makes you competitive, and what makes your content, and what supports the content that you have, and what makes for the best user experience.
Okay, great, Crystal. Thank you. That's a really thorough overview. Andrew, very different question for you, and you've leaning on your experience of large multi-location businesses and sort of local businesses. How do you change your tactics and approach when looking to optimize for a small business versus a very large business? How do you what things do you do differently? How do you approach the project sort of differently?
I think the main difference is just scale, right? It's the same tactics for the most part, except if you have 5 locations, right, it's a lot easier to write copy for 5 location pages than it's for 500, right? It's cheaper and it's easier to write unique content. So really you kind of have to have your process act together for both, really. But for multi-location businesses, there's typically many more cooks in the kitchen that need to coordinate. So there's like a development team, there's a marketing team, there's a merchandising team, there's a location manager, whatever. There's all these different people, and they all need to coordinate, have their say. As an example, we work with Sam's Club, and we do Google My Business or Google Business Profile post for them. And to get an image that's approved like on time for an event from them is like, it's a thing, right? It's like a card in a project management system that goes to like 10 people that are all CC'd on it and have to, just like, it's a thing. So that doesn't happen with a 5 location business usually.
And how do you, when you're approaching a client like that, in terms of setting expectations and time frame and sort of budget, you've obviously got to factor all of that into it, sort of right? But, but it must be so much easier on a smaller business to kind of work out the time scale and the approach than it is on a much larger business.
I think that's mostly about scoping, right, up front, or at least rescoping once you figure out, like, actually there's no such thing as scoping up front, in my opinion. Like, we have our standard way of doing it, and okay, this seems like it, and then we get into the reality of working with the client and figuring out, I'm like, we need to rescope. right? So the first action item on any SEO engagement should be rescoping. And then, but we have our standard processes, and so we kind of have an idea. Oh, for an 800 location company, like this is kind of what we're going to do all day, and it's going to adjust based on what's going on with them and what's going on with us. But it's no different. It's just having a process, I guess. Hopefully.
Do you typically charge on a sort of per location basis, and then just discount that for vast scale? Is that how you tend to price your engagement?
No, because only for content and links, like, because those are like, we have to create a page, right? Or we have to get links to a page, right? And so, but for most things, it's again, like figuring out the SEO strategy for a big multi-location business is no different than figuring it out for a small multi-location business. The difference between 5 locations and 500 is not, from everything except the content point of view, is no different. There's no difference. Like the structure is the same. The strategy is kind of the same. Yeah, it's just pages and topic.
I think where possible, like you want to try to, I think automation comes into it a bit more when you get into bigger sort of things. So, creating like variable generated or like dynamically generated like content optimizations where possible, like working on the template rather than the page can be really, really useful. I remember doing a lot of manual stuff, and when the penny dropped on that, I was like, why wasn't I doing this before? and I think that that can really help you do scale stuff. So a lot of times, like, and you talk about your standard way of doing things. A lot of times, like I will optimize for the page type, like, and I'll have a set rule of things that I'll tend to look at for a different type of page. And then, like you say, a location page, you're gonna know which things to look for on a location page, and you're gonna make sure that that's built into every template. So when they have a new location, that it's already optimized to a certain level, and your team can just go in and fine tune and make sure they haven't broken anything, as you said.
It's interesting. So we're doing that with a client now, where we just created like, let's just say a template and a script with 10 fields in it that we're just changing. And it's funny, this so-called helpful content update, it increased the indexation of those pages.
Nice.
Like, and I don't think those pages should be indexed very, like they should be. They should be, like, they're fine, but they're not great. They're just like,
they shouldn't have benefited.
Yeah.
They're not that helpful.
But yeah, we've seen, actually, this is what we've seen with the helpful content update so far is indexed pages for sites that you would think aren't that helpful is increasing. That's about what I could say has happened so far.
Yeah. It'll be interesting how it seems to play out. But at the moment, like, there's so many updates on top of updates, it's impossible to have any clean data on anything. Which is fun.
By the way, here's something that no one's talking about. I'm pretty confident there was a Bing algorithm update in August. So check your Bing data.
I will check my Bing data. I'm a big fan of Bing, actually.
Yeah. You heard it here first, guys. Bing is also apparently also updating their algorithm.
Bless them.
Yeah. It's like a tree falling in a forest, isn't it?
And the only reason I know this is because we actually had a client say, "Have you noticed anything going on in Bing?" I was like, "No, you're the first client to ask us that in 5 years." But I'll check it.
Not at all.
I guess, Andrew, on that topic of content being the one area of kind of major challenge, and the cost of doing that for large scale for pages or kind of locations, how do you tackle that? If you've got a 500 location client, how do you make it cost effective?
So we would, our typical method would be this script method. And so we'll say, okay, let's do a script. Let's say you have 800 pages and there are a bunch of options. So we think you should do 8 scripts, right? And then spread them out across the pages. So there's some variation, right? They're not all the same, but that's basically 8 pieces of content and maybe only a budget for one. So let's do 1 script. And so we'll try to get as unique as we can for the client, given their budget and timing. And then we'll launch it and we'll see how it performs. And up front, we're saying, what we want to do is see how this, since you're going on the cheap, which everyone wants to do, we're going to see how this performs. And we may come back to you and say, hey, in this market, it's not working. We need to do something unique.
Okay.
Or, hey, it worked this much, but we think we can, by updating this page, we can make you $1,000 more, right? And so we're just gonna take it step by step, and try to get them at least something that we can see if it's working or not before we can convince them that we need to do something more bespoke on a location basis. The thing we are starting to play around with is all this AI stuff, and see if we can. We're doing a test right now to see if AI written pages perform better than human written pages. And so we'll do a couple more tests like that this year. And based on that, next year, we might start to go, you know what, maybe this AI thing is worth it or not worth it, or we need to like pick our battles. Because we're not 100% convinced yet that we can get real great results with AI without some serious manipulation that almost obviates the need for it, right?
Right.
Yeah, there definitely, with automation, there definitely comes a point where you're like, is this, I've spent 3 hours trying to set up this automation, and I'm not sure if I couldn't have just done it myself in that time. There's always wondering about that. I would also say for some of the scaling out, the uniqueness on some of those pages, I think don't overlook images. I gave a talk at MozCon around image optimization, and Google is able to understand through their visual search recognition, they're able to understand landmarks, which I think is a fantastic opportunity for local businesses. So they're able to understand landmarks, they're able to understand logos. I've personally done a Google Lens search on someone's dinner. My friend sent me a picture of her dinner, and I was like, oh, let me see if I can search this on Google Lens. And I didn't even realize it until I searched it on Google Lens, but there was a logo on the top of the plate, and Google was able to tell me exactly where this restaurant was and exactly what this food was. And so, yeah, I was able to find that. So don't underestimate the value of the images on your page. Also, Google is using, and they've said this, for their near me searches with Google Business Profile. Like if you take a picture of a burrito, they're able to say, oh, there's a burrito like this half a mile from you. There's a burrito like this over here. So, and images can be rolled out at scale if you tag them in a certain way, and then you can sort of filter them so that they go into sort of different pages, and you can add different images in lots of different ways. And you can use Google Vision AI to understand more about the tools. You can do that manually using a tool. Shout out to Wix again. We have Vision AI built into our tools. So when you add an image onto Wix, you can actually see some of the tags that they add. But if you go to Vision AI, they have a trial, and you can drop an image in there and see some of the work there. There's also some tools that are now working specifically with local businesses around visual search. So there's some great opportunities for that, both with showing like local locations and also logos and photos, and other things around there.
Can I actually give I have a little image SEO anecdote that I think people will find useful. We were working with a truck driver school, and they were having a hard time ranking in the local pack for truck driver school near me for no reason, because there aren't that many. And what we noticed was Google was showing the image of a truck with every rank in the local pack with each ranking URL. And you'd look at every landing page and they all had an image of a truck. These guys didn't have an image of a truck on their landing page. We put an image of a truck on their landing page and boom, they start ranking, because Google's like, oh, this must be a truck driving school. So little stupid things like that can really pay off if you can look at the SERPs and kind of pick them apart and say what like Google gives you the formula kind of in plain sight. You just have to kind of put it together.
And it also gives you options for the SERP, for the main SERP, but also for the Google Image Pack. And for local businesses, I've had it before. I was working with a client who was a marquee, and like there's only one keyword for marquees, like for people putting up marquees. It's just marquees. They don't call it like there's marquee and there's 10. That's pretty much it. And I used image that everybody's written the same content on marquees. So it's super competitive. It's pretty much the same, but there wasn't anybody who'd done any new images, and we did images and we did image optimization on that, and we got top of the image rank, and then we moved over to the featured snippet on the main SERP. So don't overlook images, and that your story's great there, but there's also new layers to it. Like visual search is adding a way for people to search of what they see. So if they see your van out in town and it has your logo that's on your Google Business Profile, for instance, then they'll be able to find you using Google Lens, which is a great tool for local businesses.
Yeah. And we're seeing it in like all different verticals. Like we have a B2B client, and I'm like, they had an amazing article on some like super complicated thing, and they were not ranking in the top 5. And I'm like, everyone else has a cool diagram. You don't. Can you make a cool diagram? And it's like, boom. Like,
really interesting.
Yeah.
Not just in image search, in actually main search results as well that drove them up.
that's a main search result thing.
Yeah.
Because you can just look at the image, like what's the number 1 image search? Oh, it's a cool diagram. So maybe that's Google thinks that's important, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the B2B businesses, they don't spend the time, but like you can literally jump on Canva for 15 minutes and do yourself a diagram.
Right.
Okay, let's jump over to the Q&A because we've got half an hour left and we've got 39 questions to get through. So
we'll take a step by step.
Step by step, indeed.
39.
The top question comes from Claire Carlisle. That's an absolute plant. Well done, that Claire, putting your question up there. And Crystal, going to come to you first. Are there any differences between optimizing websites for local SEO and optimizing websites for SEO? And if so, what are they? Or what are the most important things when optimizing specifically for local SEO, so general SEO, that you get right?
NAP. It's an oldie but a goodie. And I would say NAP, both like NAP is like essentially like your core philosophy. Like if you were to think of like, I don't know, like House Tyrell or like the Lannister always pays his debt. Local SEO always emphasizes NAP. Like that's your house motto. Like, and it should be NAP, both like making sure it's in the footer, but also making sure that you're emphasizing your name, your address, your phone number across your website, across your digital footprint, across the content that you're doing. So like maybe not explicitly your address, but your neighborhood, your vicinity, the place that you work, the place that you serve, all of that sort of stuff. So emphasize like the name of your business, the brand of your business, the brand of like your team names. As well, I'm speaking tomorrow about team pages. I've seen some incredible results for working with local clients, optimizing their individual team pages. I had a client, they were never doing, I was like, make some content, they made no content. So after a while of this, they had like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people on their team, maybe 100 people on their team. I can't remember how many it was. And so I just went to town on all of their individual pages and it was phenomenal. We ranked number 1 for every single person on the team. And now if you've got like John Smith, the solicitor at, Smith and Sons LLP or whatever, or then there's only one of those people and there's no one else competing with you for that. So, and everybody who does that is going to have extremely high intent to find that person on that website and they're going to convert. So that's like money in your pocket. So you might as well rank for those pages. So emphasize name, address, phone number, emphasize, who you are, where you are, and how people can contact you.
And picking up on the sort of thread of sort of image search, and Andrew, come to you, for businesses, ranking locally, local services and products, what should they be really getting right in their image search to become, having add value to the NAP and the other content they're creating?
Well, I think just what I said is like you should be looking at the searches that you're trying to target and see what images are showing up at the top of those results and be like, okay, you either need a similar one or a better one. And I don't think it's any more complicated than that. If there's a video showing up at the top, you probably could use a video. And that video that image should be about the topic you want the page to rank for. The file name or the headline should be like topic -I- want to rank for, right? .jpg or whatever.
I'm preempting a question further down about geotagging of images. I'm fairly confident that nested in the 42 questions, there'll be one about geotagging of images. Does geotagging of images work?
It's the number one strategy. Everyone go out and do it. You should drop everything and spend the rest of the day geotagging. Maybe, I don't know, I've never seen it work.
I think the better thing to do is to make sure that your website has like the appropriate like organization schema, like the appropriate like geotag your business details on your business markup, so that the images that are on your page are associated with that location.
That's actually brings up something I was thinking about when you were talking about schema. Is schema to me is like 50 other like GBP stuff. It's like it's just you. All you need to know about schema is the structured data gallery and how to click on that URL, right? And then the rich results test, how to test that you did it right. And then the real power of schema is for solving weird problems. And so it shows up in all the places Crystal talked about, but it also can be one of those ghosts in the machine. So organization schema is one where we've actually solved problems where there's a parent organization and then a subsidiary, and Google's screwing something up. And we can always usually solve that by making sure the schema is done correctly, right? So use it surgically. Use it just blanket, like, okay, we need FAQ schema, but then realize that it might be the difference between, it might help you solve a problem that you didn't realize it could help you solve.
And also particularly for smaller businesses, like if you're Nike or something, all of your social handles are going to be the same, right? Because if there was somebody who had it, then you can bump them off because you, or like not bump them off, but like you can be like, no, I want that social handle, it's mine or whatever. But like if you're a smaller businesses, I've worked with smaller businesses, smaller local businesses, and they had their one of their Instagram handles was this, and their social handle, their Facebook handle was something else, and this handle was that, and that handle was that. And you can add in same as, and you can help Google to consolidate that stuff. So if you spent low ages building up your Facebook following before you got your website, for instance, you can add that schema into your website so that Google knows it's the same person or the same entity. And then also when people Google you, it will show like, oh yeah, we're here and here and here and here. And it will also help to organize it. So as you're saying, like it helps Google to organize the information. It also allows Google to, like, you can say like, this is part of this, or you can say, this is the customer service page. The customer service page is here. Here's the schema markup for all of that. Here's the contact details for all of that. It also helps like to add that stuff onto the SERP. So for instance, like your search bar, you can add the schema markup for your search bar, and then that will show in the SERP before anybody even gets to the page. They can be searching on your website to find stuff that they need, which is fantastic. So yeah, again, yeah, be strategic about it and get involved. I love schema markup. Like there's so many interesting stuff, and I love that you can like see other people's schema markup and see how they've done it and see how you might use it and play around with it. There's lots of
okay
stuff there.
Thanks, Crystal. I think we're just going to try and rattle through some other kind of questions you've got here. So this one is actually a kind of question in sort of 3 parts. I'm going to just try and break it up a little bit. It comes from kind of Carlos. It says, I guess, quickly, what are the best, what are the most important elements that you have to have on an optimized city and service landing page? If you're creating one of those templates you talked about, Crystal, what are the top 5 things that you would always want to see on a city service landing page?
So I think you want your fundamentals right. You want to make sure that you've got like all of your header tags, like H1, H2s. I'm always so appalled about how many people I see who don't have an H1 on their homepage. It drives me crazy, and I talk about it all the time, but it makes me crazy. Put an H1 on your page. Put an H2 on your page. Make sure that that's on there as well. It seems silly, but I've definitely done optimizations where I was like, should we just add an H2? Should we just make that an H2? And seen incredible uplift from various different sites. So I would say do that. I mentioned NAP. It's super important. Absolutely do that. Also unique content, and also as we've been talking about images, make sure you've got an image there. Google can recognize logos. They can recognize landmarks. They can recognize entities that are in the knowledge graph. So if you are in the knowledge graph, then they can recognize that something is in the knowledge graph. Like the Statue of Liberty is in the knowledge graph, for instance. If you take a picture of the Statue of Liberty, they go, yes, that's a Statue of Liberty, and they pull it through all of the data that they have on the Statue of Liberty when they look at that image. So that's really important. So yeah, I would say make sure you've got images there and lots of things.
Okay, great, thank you, Andrew. Sort of the next question is actually it's kind of a bit of a sort of follow from what you talked about. It's around the amount of unique content. So you got 20 locations, probably easier than a 500 location business to get unique content. But is there do you see any kind of threshold out there? Should your goal always to have completely unique human written content on each page, or you've got the sort of certain script that you use on kind of larger clients? Do you see that there's a sort of balancing tipping point at which you no longer have to have unique content on individual pages?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's all a question of prioritization and budget first, and time. So I can tell you, every time we've taken any type of business that has location pages and rewritten them to be unique, we've seen an improvement in SEO performance, like 100% of the time. And partly that's we made them unique, and partly we just changed the page, right? So Google likes it when you change pages. I think there's no magic formula, especially as you scale up. There's just like testing. I don't know if you write if you have 100,000 locations or whatever, and you write 100,000 of the same scripted page, whether like some number of them actually are going to do fine, right? And then you just have to keep testing. So getting into a testing mentality. Hey, let's roll this out just in Texas and see how it works before we do it for the whole country. Like that's kind of a thing. It doesn't, I'd say a small percentage of sites are able and willing to do that, but the ones that succeed in our experience are the ones that test and release often, right? SEO is like just get the flywheel going as fast as you can.
Absolutely.
And do more, and because not everyone's going to work. Everything you do is going to work. It's not a perfect science.
And I think that's one of the things that's great about SEO is that if it doesn't work, you can just roll it back. You can be like, "Whoa, okay, we're going to roll that back."
True. But again, when you have the bigger the site, the harder it is to roll it back. That's for true. A lot of reasons. But also, like Google may not see the rollback for 6 months, right? Depending on what's going on, right?
That's true.
Crystal, coming back to you, in terms of a similar question actually to the last one around landing pages and optimizing those, how do you tackle service area businesses differently to brick and mortar businesses?
So a service area business, like for instance, on GBP, you're going to emphasize your service area rather than your address, for instance. But I would say that it's still important to, on your about page, you might not have like your full, like your address in the same way, but I still think it's very important to make sure that people know who you are and that you're emphasizing who your team is and your expertise and all of that sort of stuff on your about pages. So you might not specifically have the same sort of information as you would for like an address location, but make sure that you're emphasizing your expertise and what you're doing there is what I would say with regards to service industries.
But if you wanted to create, try and rank in specific location, this is very much coupled with the question above, which is also the number two question we get asked is that how to rank outside the area you're physically located in. And obviously, a lot of service area businesses want to cover the different suburbs where they can drive to deliver a service or bring customers in from. So when they're creating location pages for the suburbs where they're hoping to rank organically for, but they haven't got an address, what can they be doing to compete with businesses that are physically located in those suburbs?
So I would say that if I was working with a client that was doing that, what I would do is I would be honest. So for instance, let's say you're working in Los Angeles, but you also serve San Diego. Let's say, for instance, like let's say your business is big enough to where you can serve San Diego. You can say like our HQ is in Los Angeles, but we also serve San Diego. Here are some of our San Diego clients. Like here's some of the things that we've done in San Diego. We did this at the Padres Stadium, or we did that in Mission Beach, or whatever it is. And so I think that it's worth getting some content that is relevant to those specific areas. Client testimonials are really good. Case studies are really good, but things where you're able to demonstrate and in a real and helpful way the work that you're doing there and the value that you're bringing to your clients and your customers in that space. So I would say create content that's relevant to those spaces and that's genuine.
And also, you can almost mirror what a physical brick and mortar business does on a page, except provide an actual address. So that's really the only thing that you're not able to match them on. How disadvantaged? Sorry, Andrew.
You guys, BrightLocal has like a grid ranking tool, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are really can be really helpful for SAB because you can see like where your rankings start to drop off, right? And so instead of worrying about San Diego in this case, I'd be like, okay, how can I expand my footprint the next mile or 2 miles with relevance? And that'll have a much bigger return than spending 6 months trying to get links and content for San Diego, even though you might want to do that. The other thing I'll say is we actually see an opportunity. We're trying this out with a client right now. The store within a store concept works. So basically FedEx has a GBP listing inside of every Walgreens that it has a drop-off point, right? It's a pain in the ass, but why can't you do that, right? Why don't you, if you're a plumber, why can't you do a partnership with a hardware store in San Diego and pay them $500 a month? I bet you'll make a lot more than that just from the leads, right?
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, interesting. And that's not just an SEO strategy, that's a business strategy. They're going to be generating leads for you. So yeah. But I do like the idea about rather than going for rather than going to San Diego, and getting San Diego would be like a giant killing, right? Having to rank in San Diego would be phenomenal, but actually you can equally get some very lucrative business a mile out and a mile out and a mile out. Also easy for you to service. You're based in one area. You don't want to drive 45 minutes to service a client when you can drive 5 minutes and get paid sort of paid the same amount. The grid tools are very, very good for identifying those next door suburbs or even streets that you can sort of start to target. Okay, thanks. Going to move down the Q&A sort of section. Right, okay, brilliant. They're all about trying to rank outside your area and various. They're rewritten. It's really confusing. It's like that's the same question.
Just get links. All right.
Probably a question for either of you. Someone says, just from Claire again. Are there any brands, like large scale brands, that you think have absolutely nailed their sort of local landing page or their local optimization? You think these guys get it right in terms of structure, content, use of images, approach? Do you think they've done a fantastic job? So if someone was wanting to look and emulate, where should they go and look?
I can't think of one right off the top of my head, and I haven't checked it in a while, but last year I was a judge for Search Engine Land, and I judged the entry from Dairy Queen, and Dairy Queen was crushing it. And essentially they had in my mind anyway, they had they templatized everything, but they also made everything really unique. And the user experience was really, really good. I might Google them at the moment to see what they're looking like. But I think that where people are able to give, a unique experience, but that's consistent so that you can compare and you can see the different elements. I think that's something that as a user, I find really reassuring. I find really, really good. And as an SEO, I'm always in admiration of.
Okay,
great. So that's Dairy Queen. Okay, great.
We think Home Depot usually has a really good setup and they crush it. And if you want to see someone who's like really going for it, check out U-Haul. I haven't looked at it lately, but they have a location service page for like 20 different services. And so they're really aggressive. I don't know if it's working lately, but I was always like, wow, they embrace the SEO thing.
I've seen it the other way around, where I was looking for like a Spanish tutor or something, like somebody to teach me Spanish. And it was just like, they were doing the old school thing, like Spanish tutors in this place, get a Spanish tutorial here, get a Spanish thing there. And like, they weren't doing anything. It was just an online thing. It wasn't anywhere local. And it was really annoying. I really didn't like it as a user. So yeah, I think
Google probably didn't have any other good Spanish tutors to show you.
I don't know. They were crushing it the other way. I think this is why, I mean, like, be legitimate. Yeah. If you're not working there, don't do stuff there.
Target also does a really nice job. Their page is not super complex, but you'll notice they link to not all of their categories, but a lot of their significant categories. And if you check it out, they rank well in the local packs for most of those categories. And we're pretty sure it's because they're linking to those category pages.
We've got about the last 10 minutes. We're going to rattle through some questions. This one comes to Brian. Is it best to link from a Google Business Profile to a homepage or to the local page if you only have one location?
Depends.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I've tested it. So I have so I'm in Pleasanton, California. I have a homepage, localseoguide.com, and then I have a Pleasanton page, like localseoguide.com/Pleasanton, blah, blah, blah. And I basically would flip the link and see which one improved the ranking. And I believe it always was, this is now a couple of years ago. I believe it was when I pointed at the Pleasanton page, it improved because that one was more relevant to Pleasanton. Also, here's another little trick you can do. I linked to someone was outranking me, and I linked to their homepage from my Google Business Profile page, and I immediately was number one. So what that shows you is like the page matters, like what you link to, right? And so if you're a business that just gets phone calls, you should link to your competitor's page off your GVP, because you're just going to get phone calls from the local pack, and no one's going to go to the website. So there you go. There's my little hack for the day.
Do you think that works long term? I mean, does Google not sort of figure out there's a massive disconnect between the website?
What's the difference between doing that and linking to a Yelp page?
Well, I guess if you're doing your own
Just the
web
web
page,
page.
at least you might have NAP consistency between the two rather than, your competitor.
I think we all, so sure, it's possible Google will squash that. My guess is it's such a small edge case that they don't have the bandwidth or the inclination to pay attention to that, which is the case with 90% of the stuff that happens in local packs.
Okay, interesting. All right, we're going to pick the next question. This one is actually about different industries. And do you find that local SEO strategies work consistently and as effectively across different industries, or there are certain industries that need a different approach?
Yeah, there's different things. I think also because there's different expectations for different verticals. So I've done local SEO for a local retailer, and we were trying to drive traffic in store, and we were also trying to drive traffic online. And there's lots of different things in the GBP. There's lots of different things in the website. There's lots of different things, like whether they can click and collect, or whether they can get delivery locally, or whether they can get delivery far away, or what time the shop is open, and that sort of thing, which is very different from when I've done local SEO for a recruiter who needed to rank for like people searching for jobs and people searching for recruitment consultants and that sort of thing. And they just really need to know like where your website is, what time your office is open, so they can call you, for instance. So they'll have different requirements. Similarly, depending on the vertical, for like a B2C client, your mobile isn't as much of a big deal. And even people being able to find you on maps isn't as much of a big deal as for, say, a tourism client. I've worked with tourism clients where like everybody there is on their mobile, like they're out at the ice cream shop and they want to know if they can come and see you right now down the street. And so there's different requirements there. The SEO needs to be optimized for mobile. You need to have like lots of different signals to show there, and you also need to make sure that you have all of the different elements within your GBP that back that all up. So it depends. I would say it depends. I would say it definitely depends on the vertical, and that you will change your strategy depending.
Okay, great, thank you. Going to pick out another one. Nope, that's not a question I can ask.
There's somebody here who lives in San Diego and has lots of Los Angeles clients.
Yeah.
Well done, Brad.
Brad's got a question here about schema markup for service area businesses. How does that differ, and what sort of challenges does that present?
It doesn't. Just put the location on it. Like, hey, this is, if you actually have a location, right? You in the service area, mark it up. But if you don't have the location, well, then you can't put an address, right? Or you could try to fool Google and say, hey, we work near the baseball park or whatever, and mark up the baseball park. That actually can work.
I think with schema markup there are things that Google requires. So for instance, like with jobs or with apparel, for instance, like with apparel, like they need to know like the gender, for instance, of the clothing, or they need to know that there's certain things that they need to know. You can't just throw up some schema markup that doesn't have certain parts of it. But there are sometimes where like when you go to validate it, it might say that there's a warning, but a warning isn't necessarily, that doesn't mean game over. That just means like, it's nice to have, it'd be great if you had, but you don't necessarily have to have it. So I've had it with for instance, with recruiters, they don't necessarily want to say like, these people right here at this street are advertising a job. They don't necessarily want to say the whole address, but you can say the locality. For instance, you can say it's in San Diego. You can say that it's in Los Angeles, for instance, but you might not want to say it's on like 35 Elm Street, like San Diego, wherever. So understand what is required for your schema markup and what is nice to have, and try to fill in as much as you can. I would say, as long as it's reflective of what's also on the page, but don't necessarily don't stress yourself out if you don't have to. That's what I would say. Okay,
thanks, Andrew. A kind of broad question. This comes from Jason Brown. What are your top tips and approach for doing a full on-site audit?
Have a process. That's my top tip. Don't make it up as you go along. That's a really
unpack it a little bit. What are the key?
So, okay, we're looking at the four main pillars of SEO. The four main pillars of SEO are accessibility. Can a machine understand and find all of your content? Content. Are you targeting the topics and questions that your customers are asking in search? Links. Are you getting links from relevant pages throughout the web that sort of reinforce that you are who you are and you do what you say you do? And then the last is the most fuzzy, engagement. When people click on your links, do they stay on your site or do they go back to Google? There you go.
Wow. It's like some out of body experience. You rattled that off. Like you've like, I mean, how many times have you said that speech before? That was eerie. It's just like
Many times.
Brilliant. Excellent. What you could do?
I'm sorry. Like if someone really wants to talk about how to approach an audit, hit me up later. That is a long discussion and
it's a very long discussion. But
I think
you know what? You did a fantastic summary though. It was creepy, but it was fantastic. So, yeah.
I think once you've done it for a long time, like there's a couple of things that you always check. Like there'll be 5 things. Like when somebody says, "Oh, can you help me with my SEO?" Like you'll say, "Okay, shoot me your URL," and there'll be a couple of things that you'll run through. Like there's always a few things I always check straight away, whether you decide whether it's a complete trash fire or not. And whether this is going to be like a complete like time sink to optimize or not. And I don't know, I always check like the robots.txt and I always check like the the sitemap and see what that's looking like, and also like see whether they are ranking or aren't ranking, what's indexed, what isn't indexed, that sort of thing. It's very often like a lot of times where you can sort out like things. You can sort out dumpster fire, Jason. Yes, correct. So yeah, and you can also like see where they are on the SERP and that sort of thing. But yeah, you're totally right. You'll have a process, and once you're into SEO, like you can rattle through that process at an efficient pace.
The funny thing is, I actually have no process. My team
No
has
process.
I know. I just have like I just kind of do it by feel because I've been doing it for so long. I don't have a checklist. I have like
I am an artiste.
I'm an artiste. Yeah,
Right. Final question for the artiste. Actually, for both of you. This is a good one. I'm glad we got down to this one. I say, local businesses versus, and this person cites the asker, who's Chris, cites, how do I get my local real estate clients to compete with the likes of Zillow and Realtor.com, which obviously you expand out to any other kind of industry where there are these large scale, high domain authority, kind of aggregators of sites. What can local businesses do to trump them and win out in the SERPs?
You need so your best bet is the local pack, right? Because Zillow can't get in there. So do all the things we just talked about doing to get in the local pack. You can try to compete by having the MLS listings on your site, and that's going to be a tough game because there's not just Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com, but then the 20 other lookalikes that are trying to beat them at that game. So I would actually go much more content-y for a realtor than listing SEO. What I mean by that is like try to figure out what your local customers are searching for and hit them on the content side of things versus showing up for a specific listing, which your website's not going to be super. You're going to have like an out of the box website with the listings on it, so you're going to be beholden to whatever platform you're on's SEO.
Yeah.
And sorry, Chris, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think also like what you're saying, leaning into content, I would say also lean into your team. The chances are, if you're a small realtor, like you're the person that's on the billboard, you're the person that's on like the bus stop advertisement, you're the person that's on the actual signs outside of the houses, for instance. So make sure that you have a very clear presence on your site so that people look you up, they can find out who you are and what you're doing, because the thing that you will have, the benefit that you will have, the USP you will have, is that they can talk to you. They can't talk to Zillow. They can't talk to, some of these other big sites, but they can talk to you. Absolutely, kindness is free, and it can make a really, really, really big difference. I think particularly for smaller realtors.
For those of you who have realtors as clients, here's a little freebie for you. I once told a realtor, "Hey, why don't you give away moving boxes on Nextdoor?" And they did it, and they actually got a client out of it because everyone wants moving boxes. So forget about SEO. Just go spam Nextdoor with free moving boxes. Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, Andrew and Crystal, we've reached the end of our time. Thank you very much for sharing so much, sharing your vast array of experience with different types of clients with us, for answering my questions and also the audience's questions. I've kept you for 90 minutes plus. Thank you also for suffering the technical challenges early on, and for foxing me. What was the phrase you were using? You're going into the
module.
queue or something. The module. What is it?
Can I put it in? You were on a loop, and it was just going like, we'll put it in the module as well. We'll put it in the module as well. We'll put it in the module as well.
Right. Okay, fine. I thought I'd sort of missed some sort of cultural touch point of what the module was.
You did.
You know,
it's on TikTok right now.
It's a new thing now. I'm a meme. Excellent. Thank you to both. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for those who stayed with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much to Claire Carlisle for doing a wonderful job answering chats and putting answers in the kind of Q&A as well. Please look out for our next webinar, which will probably be in a couple of weeks' time, probably hosted by Claire. And I'm looking forward to seeing you very soon. Andrew and Crystal, one last time, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us. Okay.
Thank you
Have
so
a great
much.
day, everyone. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.